Hi, welcome to Be Swift Art. Today we're going to paint a blue jay. As you can see, I've already got this one started a bit. Somehow I lost the footage for the very beginning of the blue jay. But it's pretty easy. All I did is I used cerulean blue and I did a wash. So I put water down first and then I filled in everywhere but the little spots on his wings with a wet on wet technique. So I used water to just wet down the area that I wanted the cerulean blue to go. And then I came back with a watered down cerulean blue and just kind of dabbed it in here and there. I made a few places darker, like in between his wings where it would kind of be in a shadow. And then also right at the base of his tail where it attaches to the bird there's a shadow from under the wings there. So I just dropped in a little bit more of that same cerulean blue. And now I've moved on to a turquoise color. So I think this is cobalt turquoise. And the one edge of the outer wing by his feet there, I painted a little bit of the turquoise there just for a little bit of a highlight on the feathers. And now I'm going and filling in all of the spots on his back, except for there's a few white ones where you can see I put an X in there just to remind myself not to paint those because they're going to be white and ending up using the white of the paper there. So I'm just, very loosely painting in these spots in the cobalt turquoise. And I just want to be careful not to put it where I want the white to be. You don't have to be too meticulous. We're going to add more to these little spots. I'm just kind of doing them very loosely, so it's not too difficult. We're not going to get into a great bit of deal. A great deal? I don't know. a great bit of detail, I should say, on this bird. So we are just going to fill them in one by one, and I'm using probably a consistency of like low-fat milk where it's transparent and you can see through it, just lightly, very light. So on both wings we're going to do the same thing. I'm just kind of putting a little bit of the paint on a few of them because I got quite a bit on the brush and I spread it out that way. And you can see I'm going outside of the lines, and that won't matter in the end here. I'm going to be very loose. So just carefully with my number 8 round brush. I just want to point out too, on the back of his neck, I didn't make it as dark as the shoulders of his wings there so that it'll have something to separate them. So I did that a little bit lighter there. But that was with the cerulean blue. Okay, so it looks like I've got all but these little ones between his wings filled in. And after, I can erase those X's out of the wings because I won't be putting any paint there at all. So if you paint over it, those X's won't erase. So you don't want to paint over it. And you don't even have to put the X's if you can remember, but I don't remember so well anymore. And I'm just evening them out a little bit here. I'm just kind of going over some of them that look a bit too light. I found one there that I missed. I'm just filling them all in. At the tip of his wings, he's going to have black, so you can see I left a little area there. You don't have to because the black will cover it up because it's much lighter, the blue is, than the black. So now I'm coming in and I'm going to paint kind of the shadow area under his wings, and I'm using quinacridone gold. In hindsight, I thought it was a little bit too much and it kind of made them muddy looking, and I came back and tried to put a little bit of brown in there under his wing to give the shadow. But really his legs are white, so I'm just going to kind of spread this out and see if I can't lighten that up where I made it a little too brown there. And I want to just put water on this area and kind of bring it out under his wing there where it might be a little bit of a shadow. And I'm just keep on putting water on my brush, trying to make it lighter and lighter. So that's his two legs and a little bit of his body there. So you can see as it's going to dry a bit lighter, but I still think it's too dark towards the chest area there. So I will come with a paper, toilet paper with no pattern on it. That's got 1000. It's really good for blotting up, so I can come back here and just blot it up. There we go. And lighten it up. So you could also use like a Payne's Gray, which I think might be a better choice. He almost looks like he got dirty, I think. I taught this one in a class, and I wanted to do this video for the people that didn't get to finish it so that they could go ahead and finish the bird. So even though this video is not going to be perfect for a tutorial, I hope you can get the gist of it. But if you can't, just leave me a comment and I will try to answer any questions that you have. So now I'm coming in with Payne's Gray. The Payne's Gray is almost black when it's at its full strength, and it also waters down to a really pretty soft gray. So I like the Payne's Gray a lot. So his eye is just a circle with another little circle in there as a highlight. So usually I like to paint around the highlight first. That way I won't forget and cover it up. And so and then filling in around it and make that circle. So I'm using a very small brush, number 0. And then I'm also going to paint this little stripe that he has here in the Payne's Gray. So he's got like this little collar of black that goes all the way down to under his chin. And then also that little stripe behind his eye will also be Payne's Gray. So now you can see, where it's a little bit uneven, so the back of his crest there kind of is lighter. So I can go back before it all dries and even that out with my paintbrush with just a little bit of paint on there. And now I'm just going to very carefully go around his eye. Kind of like a rounded diamond shape. And then in front of his bill, there's also a little black that kind of continues from his eye. So we'll use the Payne's Gray there as well. And then it goes up over the top of his bill. There's a little bit of area of white right above that. And in this area, you gotta be just a little careful. If you go on too much of an angle down, it makes them look very angry. Although blue jays are, I don't know if they're angry, but they're aggressive. I do know that. They're funny because my dad always thought that they were very demanding. He says so they would sit on his bird feeder and they'd call to him into the house And he said that they said, "Feed me! Feed me!" So I think he's right. When you hear a blue jay, you hear, "Feed me!" My dad was a funny guy. He's always joking around. So the bottom part of his beak is black. And then I'm just going to use black for his whole beak, although I'm not going to fill it in completely. I'm going to leave some of the white behind. I'm going to use a watered down Payne's Gray. So here I'm just adding water and kind of softening that edge and defining the little eye socket there. And I just put a little water in there, and I'm trying to do it very haphazardly. I don't want it to look like a straight line because there's really little feathers there, really teeny tiny feathers in his face. So I'm just kind of creating the shadow and maybe the illusion of the feathers just with the tip of my brush, just lightly kind of moving the water around a bit. It's just pretty much the water that's on my brush and moving around some of that Payne's Gray from what was on my brush. I didn't rinse it out completely, and so it just have a little bit of water there. But now we're going to do is bill in that light gray as well. So it's just using that water on the brush. I apologize again. I have this screen that popped up out over the top of my computer screen while I'm trying to do this. And today's been one of those kind of days for me. You know, oh, there we go. I got it down. So yeah, okay. So I'm still just creating those feathers, and around his beak, I kind of outlined it with a watery Payne's Gray and then used a little bit of water to kind of smoosh it around a little, not filling in the beak completely, leaving some white areas in there. And then we got a little bit of that Payne's Gray on the tip of his wings. There's a little scallop of black. Payne's Gray in our situation, I guess, is called. And then also on these other wings, so both wings both have the little black on them. I'm just painting them kind of in a stroke that would resemble the pattern of the feathers. And smoothing out my edges a bit, making sure they look even and proportionate. And then there's also some of the Payne's Gray in his tail. So I'm going to go ahead and paint in the direction that the feathers would go. And I'm kind of doing a little bit longer strokes to separate the feathers, see, like that. Here's a long stroke. And go down the whole entire feather. And there's also black at the tip of those feathers. So now I'm going to go on the opposite side and do the exact same thing. So I don't line them up exactly because then it just looks like a stripe. And even though in reality they kind of do look like a stripe there, but I wanted to put a little bit of an angle, kind of a curve in there to separate his feathers. So kind of, matching one side to the other, but not exactly. And then I'm going to come, there's 2 feathers in the middle here, 2 long feathers. So I'm going to start it up a little bit higher, and I'm going kind of in a chevron pattern. So this is the one side of the chevron, and then the other feather I'll go up instead of down, and it'll kind of make it look a little more random. I think for the look of the painting, that's what's going to look the best. You can do whatever you like to do. You can get a picture of a blue jay and copy it exactly how the pattern is if you want to. So I'm still using the Payne's Gray. And again, I'm trying to make them look like separate feathers, so I'm going a little bit longer on the sides. And you can see that they kind of don't line up, so I'm going to make it a little thicker, that's those spots there. So I'm going up on the outer side of it, and kind of going along that feather line. I think that might need to have a little bit middle thicker, so you can adjust them as you go. The nice thing about the Payne's Gray is it's going to be darker than any of the other colors, so it will cover up what's underneath. So you can adjust a little bit if you want to add more to it. And I decided to just kind of come down and define that. Those feathers, separate them a little bit. So this video is a suggestion from a fan of mine who won a free watercolor class from me at a fundraiser at an art gallery. So I asked her what she'd like to paint, and she said she just loved how I did my blue jays. So I did a painting with 2 blue jays in a birch tree, and it had all kinds of negative painting behind it, all the little leaves of different colors, and it was very colorful. So I made that painting simplified for class, so we just did the 1 blue jay in the branch. And we're going to do some splashy leaves on here, so it's going to end up a bit different, but I think it'll be really nice. Okay, so I'm thinking here. I'm going to try and define some of the feathers of the little spots on them. So just the very, very tips of those spots in that same kind of straight up and down motion in the direction of what feathers would look like. I'm kind of making them a U shape with the Payne's Gray. So I'm kind of coming up on the side, then painting a little thicker on the bottom, and then coming up on the other side. So this one I used cerulean blue. You can also, and this cerulean blue is from Magello, which it's Mission Gold watercolor paints. And it's kind of more cobalt than my Daniel Smith cerulean blue is more sky blue. It's a really pretty blue jay blue though, but if you don't have that, you can use cobalt. The cobalt would look great too. I'm talking about the body of the bird here. So this is the Payne's gray we're painting with right now. And just add that little bit of dark at the end of his feathers. And I'm coming in now with just some water and kind of softening the inside edge of the feathers. Just putting a little bit more, what do you want to call it, graduation. So I'm using the cobalt blue and some water, and I'm just coming in between some of these feathers and softening up that black edge where need be, and also darkening the center of his wing a little bit, so give it kind of a curved look. Just kind of making like almost like a shadow would be. Just coming in now, softening, bring some of that paint over. So that's going to mingle with the Payne's gray, this cobalt, and it's just water now. So I'm just dabbing some water. So I don't want it to look too precision, kind of loose. Kind of just the little bit of information that there's spots on his wings, on those feathers. Cleaning up my edge. So I'm getting out just a little bit of my toilet paper so I can kind of mop the excess back towards the Payne's gray. And then I can wipe my brush onto the toilet paper so I have it in my other hand there, nice and handy. Rinse my brush and then use that toilet paper to mop up the paint. I'm doing a couple at a time in between mopping it onto the toilet paper. You could use paper towel, that's just what I had handy. I like to use the toilet paper because it has no pattern in it. The Viva paper towels, they're pretty good too. They don't have a pattern. But the toilet paper will only absorb so much because it's so thin. This is the cheap stuff, so it's really thin. So when I have puddles of water but I don't really want to soak up too much of it, you can use that toilet paper and it'll soak up just enough. Kind of lift off a little bit of those puddles, but it'll still keep it good and wet. So now I am just doing the same thing on the other side. I'm just putting a little black at the tip of the spotted feathers where the turquoisey color is, not the white. The white I'm just leaving white. The white feathers. And then I'm going to rinse my brush out, get all that Payne's gray off of there. And I'm coming back in with a very watery solution of the cobalt. And I'm just bringing it just above where the Payne's gray is. On the inside of the feather only, not the outside. And, you know, if you just kind of gives it a variegated, not so controlled look. And I'm also adding in that very watery cobalt blue kind of consistency of maybe low fat milk. You can see through it. And then I'll put some water on top of this too and let it blend just like we did the other side. I'm coming around these spots, deepening up the blue a little bit there. Make them a little bit more dramatic. Get around the little white spots, but not inside. And evening out some over here that I see. Sometimes the light is so shiny on the water that's sitting on your paper, and then when it starts to dry, you see you actually missed a spot. So I was just fixing that a little bit. And I'm just taking my little fine brush and I'm just outlining those long feathers that are on the side there. Think stripes. And this is just water. Just put water on my brush and I'm just softening up this edge around his shoulder, and I want to kind of make it look a little blotchy, little mottled looking. So I'm just taking the water and kind of smooshing it around. And then I'm coming back with some more water. When you do this, you could get blooms, which would look really good on this one, so I wouldn't be unhappy about that. I kind of went over the edge there, so I decided to make it a little fluffier. So he's got a fluffy tip of his wing there. And now I'm just kind of moving that cobalt blue around a bit. Just evening it out. So you can see how light that dried there. You hardly even know that there's that turquoise color in there. It almost looks white. I'm coming back and deepening it up a little bit with this cobalt and water. Just kind of smooshing it around. If you're painting along with me, at any point, don't forget you can always stop the video and do the step that we're working on and then turn it back on and continue on. And sometimes I paint faster than other people can. And I hope these videos will help you. If you are painting along with me, let me know. I'd like to hear your feedback. I'm just evening out. In between the spots here, I'm just moving the paint around and until I think it looks nice. You know, you're the artist, so whatever you like is what's the right way. So when you feel it's done, that will be enough. I like what happened over the top of his shoulders with that water in there. Now that part, I don't know. So I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can't work it into the background. I'm just taking water, just plain water, on a clean brush and just kind of moving it around. And so if it flows a little bit around there with some blue, that'd be all right. And I'm seeing if I can't scrub off a little bit of that gold that I had put there, and now I'm going behind his neck with the same, and I am adding just a little bit of blue here because the other stuff was already dry and wasn't moving, so I added just a tiny bit of that really watered down cobalt there, and I'm just smushing it around the paper, just trying to make a very subtle soft edge. So I'm bringing water over here so everything can match. I'm going into the bird, but the paint is not moving, so I add a little bit. Got a little speck in there. And try to work that out. There we go. If you do get a hair or a little speck, don't try to use your fingernail or something pointed or sharp to pick it up, because it'll make a little dent in your paper, and then all the paint will go down into the crevices of that dent and make a line. So you try to do it with your finger. A lot of times, the painting will be dry enough where it won't leave a mark, that little speck anyway, so don't worry about them too much. And now I'm just doing the very edge of those long feathers of his tail with the the Payne's Gray. And there's a little bit of a white feather and a long white feather on the other side. So that's what that little line is about. And just barely, the very tip of my very fine brush, I'm going to outline that long white feather there. And then it's just showing a little bit on the other side. And I just outline the other side a bit, just because I have that other side outlined, so it'll kind of look like it's supposed to be outlined. And now his legs are also Payne's Gray, so I'm starting out with a watered down version, and then we'll add a little bit darker on top of this. So there's his little toes. Another little toe. And I left just a little bit of white to kind of separate them, but when I bring in the darker on top, I might blend that in. We'll see how it looks. And here's another long toe. And this one's wrapping all the way around the branch. Trying to get my line straight. And I'm just coming in now with that very watered down Payne's Gray and making some kind of feather marks around where his legs would not have feathers. And just short little strokes, because these would be short feathers. And kind of making a shadowy area here on that rear leg. Just do some very short strokes, thinking about where the shadows are. So it'd be kind of a shadow there by his leg and by the front a bit. That hind leg would be more in shadow than the front leg. And then I'm just bringing that gray in for the little feather marks. Little short strokes in the direction that the feathers would go. And it also toned down some of that brown that I didn't like, that quin gold that I put in there. So it doesn't bother me as much now. Put a little extra shadow there under his tail area. And I'm just coming back with a little bit of water on my brush. Soften it. So we got that shadow. And then, I can always put a little bit of white on there to lighten it up a bit and bring in some more feathers. So there it is after it dried. So I can come back now with a little bit of the cobalt with the little brush again. And I'm just going to paint in some feathers on that crest. little ones right in the top of his forehead. And then they get kind of longer, kind of making him a little eyebrow the way it's kind of coming out. And then these ones here are longer. I'm just kind of going in the direction that they would lay. And leaving that very front of his forehead white. And then I'll do a little deepening up here and some feather marks. Some kind of deepening up the back of his neck. And just putting a few strokes of a little bit of watered down feathers. And I'm just coming in with water, and that Payne's Gray, it moves quite easily, so it will soften that line out and give a little bit of dimension to the roundness of his head. And now I'm coming back with watered down cobalt blue. I wanted to bring that shadow into the side there, and a couple little mottled feathery looking brush strokes here. Just really almost tinted water with blue. It's very light, and it's going to dry lighter, so got to remember that. I'm just adding water, so that'll kind of move that paint around so it kind of looks more mottled looking. Give you the illusion that there's a lot of feathers there. And I like to darken up just the very top of the eye. Little shadow from where the kind of like an eyelid would be. I just put in a little bit of watered down Payne's Gray there. And now that it's dried, I can come back and put a little bit more on his beak. So the underneath of his beak would be quite dark. And what we did before would just be kind of a texture in his bill, maybe. I'm just going to take some water and soften that. Yeah, that looks more natural. Some feather strokes there. You can get as detailed as you want with this. You can put in all kinds of little feathers. For this one, I'm just trying to make it a little easier, so I just did a few of the feathers. And I'm softening up that white and putting a little bit of the watered down Payne's Gray where it would be in shadow on those side feathers. And I'm going to come back to his legs now, and we'll do a second layer on his legs. So the back of his leg would probably be more shadow there, a little darker. And I want to separate the toes. So I'm going to just put a line in there for the one toe. And then the underneath of the other toe. So I'm going to try not to make them solid black. They are solid black, but you know, we're trying to do a painting here. So here's a little bit of texture. They kind of have, you know, rough texture in their little legs. So underneath the foot there would be darker because it would be shadowed, in shadow. You don't really want to do too much to it, but I'm just taking water and softening out some of the lines so it's not such a deliberate stripe. And I'm putting a little shadow in there. making his whole leg just a bit darker. A little bit darker shadow underneath his foot. And we'll let that dry, and we'll come and do this side. Same kind of thing, where it's going to be darker underneath his foot, and where it's wrapped around the branch. And then we'll dip there. Maybe that would be a little darker. And some little texture dots. A little bit of water, just bringing in some water. So now that one is darker than the first one that we did. So I'm going to come back. I'll put a little bit of claws in there. I'm going to come back and probably have to tweak it just a little bit. We'll see how it dries, because it does dry lighter. I'm taking my blow dryer and making sure everything is nice and dry, because the next step will be the branch, so we don't want any of that to bleed into the branch. So we'll get it nice and dry around the feet where we just painted. Make sure that, around his neck there is also good and dry. I'm going to take my Doc P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, a nice titanium white, and it is very opaque, so it'll cover up what's underneath. So I thought that Quin Gold there was too gold, so I'm just taking some of this Bleed Proof White and softening it up a little bit, kind of toning it down, if you will. And then I got a little bit too gray in some of the feathers there, because it's really white under there, so I'm just gonna put some there, and I'm just kind of smushing it around. I want it to have that same kind of mottled look like the shoulders do. Kind of makes it look like there's feathers there without painting in every feather. Not as much on this back leg here, maybe a little bit on that front part would be nice and white, but then underneath by the wing I want to leave that have some shadow, and also in between his two legs there. And I can balance it a little bit so that it's throughout the painting. So I'm going to put a little bit of white in his cheek and also in his neck, above his eye, just to balance that color throughout the bird. And it makes it look like it has more feathers. So I think just a little bit more here. This is a little bit watered down, so I just add a little bit more to get, some darker and lighter whites. A little bit too much right there. Just get some water and smooth it out. Got to be careful with this bleed proof white, because it can look heavy on your painting, so you don't want to use too much of it, because it's not transparent like a lot of the watercolors are. It's more opaque for sure. Okay, so now I am trying to choose a color for the branch. So I decided to go with sepia. And keep it kind of on the cool tones. It's kind of a gray brown. So I'm just going to go using the whole length of my brush so I get a nice smooth line. Now I have to use the tip here because the foot is there and I don't want to paint over the foot. So wherever you can, use the full length of your brush. You can get a smoother line that way. Be careful around his little foot. So as you can see, I'm kind of going heavy on the underside of the branch here. So we're doing that side first. Because then we can just take some water and move the paint around to the top side and it'll be lighter. I apologize, I'm out of frame a little bit. There's a little bit of a branch on the other side. But now I just rinsed my brush out and I'm just coming with water, picking up some of that paint that I initially put down on the branch. So just bringing in some water. Be careful to paint around his little feet. It's probably going to need to be quite dark there so the feet show up. And I'll put a little bit, just the water. So I'm just, the only paint that's on there is the paint I put down on the bottom side of the branch. The water is just kind of picking that up and helping it to flow and it'll be lighter on the top side of the branch. So remember, watercolor paint will flow wherever water is, and it'll stop where the dry paper is. And now I'm just going to come back. I've wiped off my brush, and now I'm just going to coax it so I don't have a straight line. And fix some of those little edges up a bit, and then up here, coax it. And there's another branch coming out here and kind of twisting around and going over that branch. The main branch. So these are some little smaller off branches. And I'll just bring that out. Kind of forks out here. Do the same on the other side while it's still wet so that it blends nicely. If you let it dry first, then when you paint next to it, it'll leave like a little line there. So try to do it all in one stage, one step here. So I'm deepening up the underside and the outside where it would naturally be darker. And then I'm going to do the branch that's by his head. I'll move the paper around. What's nice about painting on a block, or even if you're taping it down to a board, this is a block that we're painting on now. And a block means that it's sealed on all four sides. So you don't have to tape your painting down and you can paint right to the edge. Or you could just use a piece of watercolor paper that you tape down to a board. But what's nice about it is you can move it in a direction that's comfortable for you to paint. So I'm painting kind of sideways here now, towards me. I did the same thing. I did the darker underneath. I'm coming back now with water. And just moving that paint, just picking up the paint that is already on the paper from the underside of the branch. I'm just using the tip of my brush just to do the fine little details. Otherwise, I'm using the full body of the brush, so that'll be a nice, smooth, crisp line. Same thing over here. And we're just moving the water. And we keep on. We've got those little side branches there. I have to do the same thing too. So just like we did the other side, we're doing this side. Okay. And just keep on going. Making it darker on the inside where it would be darker. And then I'll do this little branch up here. And right up to the edge. And just adding a few little branches here. You can see all the little branches. Just kind of putting them on here and there, as many as you want. You don't have to do a lot of them if you don't want to. Just put some. We're going to put some little splashy leaves over the top of these. So they are going to get covered up a little bit. So I'm going to get my blow dryer out and give it a little blow dry. And we can do our splashes and not have everything turn one color. I have a friend staying with me. She came from Pennsylvania to Florida to get away from some of the cold, and wouldn't you know, our high is like 70 here, and it's been in the 30s at night. It's not very nice weather. But she's up in the kitchen cooking some chicken noodle soup for us. So you might hear some pots and pans rattling around up there in the video. I don't know if it's picking it up, but I can hear it. I'm right on the other side of the wall from her, so... And now that it's nice and dry, I can take my eraser and erase those X's and any lines that might be showing through. I can give it a little erase there. Around his tail, some of that pencil line showed. And up there in my branches, there's a little bit of pencil line that's showing. So before we do the splashes and things, we can get rid of these. Once paint's on top of it, you can't really erase it too well anymore, so... Try to get them now. I don't mind a few pencil lines because sometimes, you know, it kind of defines the painting just a little bit. Got to make sure it's dry though, because otherwise it'll just smear the paint, of course. Get all the little shavings off the painting too. A nice little brush to brush them off. Okay, so there's our branches and our bird. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just taking some of the toilet paper, and I don't want the spots, splashes that we're going to put on my bird, so I'm just going to cover my bird completely with the toilet paper, or you could use paper towel. And it doesn't have to be exactly like the shape of your bird, just as close as you can get. Because wherever the splashes fall on the toilet paper, the paper will absorb it before it gets to your painting underneath, as long as it's not too much of it. So we just try to avoid that area anyway, but this is just like a little insurance that it will stay away from my bird. So I'm just kind of flattening it down, folding up some corners that, maybe I wouldn't mind a splash to go. And right over here by his tail, he only got one little thick, one ply. It's only one ply paper anyway. So I'm just kind of piling it up just a little bit, just for some extra insurance. There we go, we'll just flip that over. There, and then all the other areas, if the splashes go there, that'll be good. That'll look fine. So I'm getting a nice fat brush. This is a number 14 round brush. Just whatever's a nice big fat brush that'll absorb a lot of water. So I'm going to get it really wet, and I've got my paint on there, and then I'm going to dip it into my clean water. Doesn't look clean over there, but it is. And I'm just kind of going straight up and down. So I'm using that big brush, and I'm dipping it in the water, and when you do that, it'll make bigger dots. Little bigger splashes. So I'm starting with my turquoise, and you can see I got a whole brush full. The brush is full of watered down paint and then dipped in water, so it'll flow right off of the tip of my brush. Going right in an up and down motion. You can also tap it onto your finger or onto another brush, but it gets finer and you might get splashes that go in a direction. So I'm trying to keep them a little bit more, straight up and down, so I know exactly where they're going to go. So I'm just shaking them out. So this is the cobalt. So I'm using all the colors that I used in my bird. No, it's a cerulean. That's the cerulean. That is the Magello Mission Gold cerulean. Kind of looks cobalt. Wherever I think that this is, trying to do a blue toned painting, but I'm making the leaves all blue and also with the turquoise in there. You could do green if you wanted. I was just keeping it all on a certain color palette, just using the palette that's in my bird. You could put a little Payne's Gray in there too. I didn't do that, but you could do that. So now I cleaned off my brush, and I'm just taking water, lots of water. My brush is soaking wet, dripping wet. So when I put this water on top of another dot that's already on there, it's going to make that one bleed, or make some of those colors bleed together. And so you get a very watery, big, blotchy, soft look. Sometimes you might have to touch one or two to get them going. But yeah, just soaking wet brush. It's just falling, dripping off of my brush there. Just splashing water on top of the dots that I already put. And I'm just touching a few of them that are a little stubborn and don't want to move. So I'm going to make them move. Make them do what I want them to do by doing that. And now we can take off the toilet paper. And you can see that our bird stayed nice and clean. Mop up a few of those little drops so I don't get them all over my painting. I'll clean up as I go. Kind of goes everywhere. So now I'm just going to take water, just plain water, rinsing out my brush real good so that it's just water, no blue or anything in it much. And, oh wait, I'm sorry, I picked up a little blue. I'm just doing a soft, watery, smushy background here. Just here and there, leaving some white areas in there. Just bringing some of that blue and bringing the white down a few notches on the paper. Just barely. It's going to dry even lighter than this, so you're hardly going to see this. But I think that, you know, having a little bit of this color smushed around in there looks nice. So that's going ahead, and a few of the spots that I wish got more watery looking, I'm adding a little bit of this water on it. And now that I'm touching it with the brush, I'm getting a little bit of that sepia from the branches that are getting wet, and it's lifting up some of that, activating some of that dried paint. So I like that look too. So I'm going to go ahead and touch over my branches a little bit. And I'm just smooshing it out and bringing some next to the bird, being very careful by his little wings and his body that I'm not putting blue on it, that white area especially. I'm just going to be careful there and try not to overlap the white with any blue. And then this along the side feathers on his tail. Be careful there. And I got some big puddles, so I'm going to take my toilet paper and just lay it over the puddle and just zoom really quick. It absorbs just enough, not a lot. You can do it over until you got it how you like it. I just got a little too much water there where it kind of was starting to flow into my bird, so get it off of there before it soaks in any. And just touching a few places here and there to soak up some of the water, just to keep control of that water. I liked where that sepia had kind of bled into the background there, but sometimes you just can't stop yourself and you go, oh, that's nice, and then you press right on top of it and take it off. Why? I don't know. But anyway, I just splashed the water around there, and I'm going to let it dry. This is best to let dry naturally because there's so much water in the paper. It continues to move that paint around until it dries. So if you can let it dry naturally, that's really good. And if you took the blow dryer to it, being that wet, it would blow those spots around. So you got to let them dry a little bit anyway before you blow dry it. I always think that's a good practice if you can let it dry naturally. It always kind of does its own little painting on its own. I'm just adding a few more watered down splats of the blue. I kind of really like how that contrast of the blue against the white and that little bit of turquoise in there. I like that, so I'm going to add a little extra, but it could use it. Being very careful now because I did not cover my bird again. So I'm just doing those outer edges, so I'm not getting too close to my bird. And I'm putting a few of these right into some water droplets. And get my toilet tissue out again. Lap up some of the ones that look like they're getting out of control. There's a big water puddle right above his wing, but it's not flowing into the bird. So it might leave a little bloom there, so I'm kind of watching it, see what it's going to do. Put a little bit more blue here. It's very easy to get carried away, so I'm trying to keep that in mind, like what do I really need, as opposed to this is fun, let's just keep going, because it is a lot of fun to splash paint around. I'm doing the same thing now with the cobalt turquoise. I'm liking the way that looks. It looks kind of like leaves in a way. A few more turquoise ones up here to bring it up. splatters. I'm just tapping the brush with my forefinger there. Getting a few little splatters. And now I'm just touching the tip, very watered down. Just the tip, adding just a bit here and there. Okay. Now it's all dry. You can see how soft and watery all that looks. I think it looks very pretty. And I've signed my name to it. Give you a little close-up look here so you can see how that all dried. And there we have happy little blue jay sitting on a branch waiting for you to feed him. Okay. Well, I really appreciate that you stayed to the end of my video and that you watched it. Thank you so very much for that. If you get something out of my videos, if you want to help me, then go ahead and subscribe. You can press the subscribe button up there. And also, if you press the like button. So peace and love be with you until we meet again. Thank you again. Bye-bye.